Hey guys, wanted to go ahead and do a review of 5 different IEMs, so this might be a little bit longer. It'll be a review of the Moondrop Blessing 2. It'll be a review of the Etymotic ER2xr. It'll be a re-review of the Truthear Hexa, or Truthear Pure. And then a re-review of the Sennheiser IE200. And then a re-review of, my first review actually of the SoundMagic E10. So I'm going to go ahead and the reason I want to do this is because, so someone said to me, I'm looking for IEM recommendations for someone who enjoys female vocals. Okay, that's me. Instruments, yes. And a bit of alternative rock, okay. I currently own the Audio-Technica M50X. I know those headphones very well. I have those. Those are neutral with a little bit of a bass boost and a little bit of a treble boost. And a bit of, and I really enjoy their sound. Which IEMs would you recommend the most? And then I said, I'm not as knowledgeable with IEMs just yet, so I don't know. I only know what I currently have. And then he responds with, okay, out of the ones you have, which ones would you recommend the most? Okay, well, so the too long didn't read, so you can make the video short. I recommend the Etymotic ER2xr out of all these. These are my favorites. These are the one I use all the time. I use these all the time when I edit my audio, when I'm on the go. I use these all the time when I'm on Zoom. I've literally put one in and one out. I use these when I watch YouTube. I use these when I just all the time. However, what I do want to say is you want to make sure that you get the final audio tips. So the final audio tips have a red adapter that allows you to put in other tips in here. Because when you buy the Etymotic ER2xr by itself, it comes with these flanged tips that are pretty intrusive to the ear. And so what I find is when you get the final audio tips, and actually, ironically, I use the final audio tips, and I use this color. It's purple in the back. I don't know which one that is, but that's the one I like for my ears, and I think it sounds freaking great. And it sounds really good. So that's what I really like about these is that they're extremely neutral, but at the same time, so I can edit my audio. I can look at microphone reviews, and I know that that's how a microphone sounds. I can listen to other people's tracks and hear flaws in the recordings. But at the same time, because it's the XR version, and because it's the final audio tips, it's a combination of two things. The final audio tips add a little bit of bass, I think. And then also the fact that it's the ER2xr version adds a little bit of bass. So in general, I find that it's just that fine line of accuracy, yet it's still enjoyable. I do want to make a distinction here. I had the Truth Hexa before, and I returned those. The problem with the Truth Hexa is I felt that is actually, so I think this is actually true neutral. This is true neutral. I feel like Truth Hexa are more bright neutral. And then I feel like the Hexa Pure, the Truthear Pure is actually more warm neutral. And let me just kind of go over these really quickly with you, kind of what my 2 cents are. SoundMagic E10, this is V-shaped. The IE200, Sennheiser IE200, this is Harman. It's like more Harman. This is Truthear Pure. This is more neutral, warm. And then this is the Moondrop Blessing 2. This is neutral, bright. And then this, which is ER2xr, true neutral. Feels like a Baldur's Gate 3 game. True neutral. Anyway, so that's that. These are the ones I use the most. What I also like about them is, and I could never explain this very easily until someone actually explained it to me, I prefer bullet-style IEMs. In other words, pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out, right? The problem with like something like a lot of these are they're not pop in, pop out. It's kind of like this one too. This is actually a pop in, pop out. Bullet style IEMs. You pop it in your ear, pop it out, pop it in your ear. And so, and I'll come back to this later. But now let me go ahead and tell you a problem what I have with the headphone here. This is Sennheiser IE200. So the IE200 has the sound of it is very pleasant. Has a very it's in many opinions it kind of it's the Harman curve in my opinion. But there is 2 major flaws with this, but it's enough to be a deal breaker. So the second is that the wire is pretty flimsy and it tends to tangle very easily. That means it's adding more time when I'm trying to put it on. But what really irritates me the most, but it's actually the reason why it's actually the most comfortable out of all the IEMs I have. So when you look at how it is, you'll see that it's very stretchable, right? So it literally it conforms to the size of your ear and your shape of your ear. But not only that, this thing right here, right, work at me, rotates. Well, this is a good thing and a bad thing. The great thing about these is that, and why I actually kept these, is because these sound pretty damn good, but they're still kind of accurate. But I would say these are more Harman. But the problem with these is that these would always constantly be facing the wrong way. Then I got to twist it the right way. And then I got to formulate this to my ear every single time. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it's like a big deal when I keep swapping back and forth between tracks. So that got really old. But other than that, I think this actually has a very natural sounding treble to it. And I want to just put a disclaimer out there. I disagree with anyone and everyone who calls this V-shaped, because it is not V-shaped, right? Because what you'll notice is basically, yes, the bass is a little bit more pronounced, right? This has more bass than the Blessing 2. This has more bass than the Etymotic ER2xr. This does not have more bass. This has the most bass, which is the Soundmagic E10. But the Truthear Pure has a little bit more bass compared to the IE200. And so, yes, I do agree that the bass is a little bit lifted, but the treble is not lifted, right? They're saying, in order for something to be V-shaped, both have to be elevated. But here, I actually feel the treble is a little bit smoothed out, kind of like it's toned down a bit. So if the treble is toned down a bit, that's not V-shaped. That's what you would call L-shaped, right? So that's my 2 cents on the IE200. Okay. All right, let's get back to the Moondrop Blessing 2. So I don't ever use these anymore, but I would say these are a better version of the Hexa. And that's why I returned the Hexa, because this is like better than the Hexa in every single way. It is basically what the Hexa is trying to do, which is a bright neutral headphone, but this just has more soundstage. So the way I would explain it is like, this is like a better Hexa, but I still didn't like this either. I felt like this didn't have enough bass, and I feel like for me personally, the minimum amount of bass I want is what's on the Etymotic ER2xr. This is at least where I'm happy. That's why, at least in terms of bass, I was happy with the IE200. I was happy with the Truth Hexa, and I'm definitely really happy with the Soundmagic E10 with the bass. But I wasn't really happy with this, and I wasn't really happy with the Hexa. And people will say again that the Truth Hexa are like very, they're warm, and no, they're not. They're very like, you know what it is? It's very similar to another set of headphones, which I don't have right now. It's in the back, the Sony MDR7506. Just kind of like that harsh, sibilant sort of thing. And no, it's not a seal issue, because I double-checked and triple-checked and quadruple-checked. No, I will tell you 100% that the IE200 has more bass. I will tell you right now, the Hexa Pure has more bass. The Etymotic ER2xr has more bass. This does not, and even the Blessing 2 had a little bit more bass than the Hexa. So the Hexa was why off you go. You're going back to Whole Foods Returns, right? So anyway, but the other issue with these is I found them just a little bit clunky, right? Like, so compare contrast how big that is, right, compared to that. This is a lot more easier to wear. This is just big clunky. And sonically, ironically, I actually prefer the sound of the Etymotic ER2xr. It doesn't have the same, I would say, soundstage as the Blessing 2, but I find that, I just prefer the sound of these more. Okay, so that was that. Now let me just go ahead and just come back to the Hexa Pure, which I reviewed literally yesterday. And now this is a re-review, because there is some new information I do want to say about the Hexas. Okay, so the more and more I listen to these, the more and more I'm like, these are really good. This is the first critical-ish headphone that I'm like, okay, this is actually worth the hype. Like, this actually sounds good. I didn't like the Critical Zero Red, because I felt that dulled down a lot of the female vocals too much. I didn't like the Hexa, because that didn't have enough bass. I didn't really like the Blessing 2 as much, because I wanted a little bit more bass. And I felt, and I'm not a bass head. If you notice something about these headphones, what do they all tell you? Etymotic ER2xr, neutral. IE200, somewhat neutral-ish. Hexa Pure, Truth Hexa Pure, whatever. This is like neutral warm, and then this is like neutral bright, right? I'm looking for like a neutral thing, something. My main goal is to be able to make sure that the audio tracks that I'm mixing or editing for voiceover are accurate enough, but at the same time, I'm looking for something that can also double down slightly as enjoyable, which so far is the Etymotic ER2xr. Okay, so the Hexa Pure, there's two things that's actually kind of jiving at me now that I've had them for now about 24 hours now. So the first thing I want to say is, my goodness, this does not require a lot of gain at all to get loud, you know? So I use the Mo2M2 audio interface, and I just a smidge, and it gets loud. Compare and contrast that to other headphones, which require a lot. So this actually does not require much gain, not much volume. But also, on that note, I also noticed when you get a little bit too loud, it can distort a little bit, quite, you know. So I've learned to tone the volume down on these. The second thing I want to say, and I really, really want to emphasize this, make sure, again, everyone's ears are different, but for me, use the small ear tips. Don't use the big ones. Dude, the big ones sound like shit, right? So go with the small ear tips. It's extremely important. I think that's something, and it's a hassle to put on the small ones, but it's worth using the small ones. The third thing I want to say is, my goodness, the comfort's not very good on this. It's just, you know, it's a little, it's just not, at least not for my ears. I just find over time, you know, but I think sonically, these sound really good. These are basically, I would say, neutral with a little bit of a warm kind of bass, and the treble is a little bit toned down, but not too much like the Critical Zero Reds. So, yeah, but going back to the drawing board, I would say the one I use the most is the Etymotic ER2xr with the final tips. You got to get the red adapter with the final tips. If you're not going to get the final tips, don't even bother buying these. Like, I'm serious. Don't even bother buying these if you're not going to buy that adapter. You have to get that adapter because that takes the comfort from a -10 to a 9. Actually, I would even say at this point, this is the most comfortable IEM out of almost everything except the IE200. But this, again, it has its deal breaker issues because it's just a hassle to wear. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that was helpful to someone.